Hi, my name is Stephen Nuttall. I'm one of the blacksmiths here at the Tuckerton Seaport, one of the traditional blacksmiths. And what I'm going to do is go into the shop and show some of the stuff that we do. Years ago, I was at another state park here in New Jersey, and I noticed they had a blacksmith shop. So I went in and asked questions to find out what was going on, if they had, because there was nobody working. So I went in to the visitor center and asked if there was, if the blacksmith shop was actually in use, and they said it was. And I said, well, do you have classes? And they said, yeah, we give classes. I said, well, how can I be a part of this? So they took my telephone number, passed it on to the village, well, not the village blacksmith, but the park blacksmith, and he gave me a call, and I started apprenticing with him. From that, down at that state park, I was able to learn enough to show the board here at the Tuckerton Seaport that there was an opportunity to open up a blacksmith shop, and I'd be happy to help as a volunteer down here. So the blacksmith shop's been here, I believe, going on 3 years now. All right, back in with the steel. Get this good and hot again, then I'll work the corners off. I'll take the four sides of the square bar, take those four sides down and knock each of the corners off, turn it into 8 sides. Then I'll go over the corners of those 8 sides, make it to 16, and then 32, and then I'll just continue rounding it until I have a nice transition from the square bar here, about 10 inches down, into a round bar all the way to the end. Try to get all those hammer marks out. Let's see if we can round this off a little bit more. Still rounding, picking those edges off. It's a little bright now, I really can't see where the corners are, but experience has kind of told me which way to turn. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to show you how you can make shapes and change the shape of this clay into something that I could do similarly here with actually steel. So you're going to have clay. If you're going to need a hammer, you can use just a little wooden mallet like this. If you've got a regular claw hammer at home, you can use that one. This one's old and beat up. It's perfect for this activity. Or you can make your mom or your dad very sad by using a rolling pin that they might use in the kitchen. This is a piece of steel from the shop here, and I'll use that and demonstrate how you can use this. To help out in making the clay into different shapes, I've got an anvil. You may not have an anvil. Actually, this is a wooden anvil, but it works just fine. You may have just a piece of wood here. You can use this piece of wood, maybe laying it around in the yard or in the garage. You can use this as your anvil. That's basically all an anvil is a surface that you can work your material on. And now that you know what parts you'll need to start your project, we'll actually get into changing the shape of this clay into something more interesting. Okay, here we go. We've got our clay here. Yours may not look exactly like this. This is kind of old and dirty. We've used it quite a while. You see it is square or cubular. So what we can do, one of the first things to do is just to learn how to use the hammer and your material. Certainly you don't want to have your hands over it. You don't want to hit yourself. So when you have your clay and it comes out of the packet, it's still going to have these edges on it. So let's practice knocking these edges down similarly like I did inside with the steel. And you don't need to hit too hard, so just move your fingers away from where you're going to hit, and we're just going to just walk it down. Keep your fingers to the side, and so now you see that it's knocked some of those corners down. We turn it all the way over, do the same thing. Knock it down until it's kind of squashed. Then move it up and then work on these corners. Turn it over. So now it's almost starting to look kind of round. And then you can just hit a little bit more rapidly and turn it as you go. continue to hit on the corners, and pretty soon, before you know it, you've got a piece that's almost perfectly round. It's round on this end too. Now the thing about the anvil is that you don't only work just here on the top, you work on the side. So I'm going to turn the anvil so that it's easier to see this way. So if I take my clay and move it over here to the edge, and if I strike right here on top, it'll push this side of the clay down. So we can just go, we can hit it, sort of flatten it out, and you end up with something that we call a shoulder. And so I'm going to do that all the way across. I'm going to flatten this out all the way across. So now we've got something called a shoulder here. And if we take that shoulder there, lay it on and roll it up on the edge, and if we hammer down again, we can start to isolate that shoulder a little bit more. Turn it back again. And then if we continue to work this, we'll end up with something that looks like a head on a stem. All right. Turn it again. And notice how it's getting flat again. It's because the anvil is flat, the hammer's flat. Turn it back up on the side. Now, what you can actually kind of see is that if I were to take this side and to start hammering this down into a point, we could make up something that looks kind of like a nail. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to hammer it down a little bit, not too hard. Turn it, hammer, turn it, hammer, turn it. We continue working the same process. This is called a taper. And just continue working it little by little. You don't need to hit too hard. Just continue turning. So now what we have is something that could be a square nail, but like when we started off, if you take the corners off, turn it, work the corner, work the corner, and hammer and roll. So you end up something that looks more like a spike than a nail. We could take this back over to the edge and knock it down, turn it, and now we can make the head. So the key to doing all of these is to try to use the anvil, your hammer, or your rolling pin to make the shape. It's easy to do this with your hand. The whole goal is to try to use this tool, and your material without making changes with your hand here. So now we've got something that looks kind of like a nail, a big, fat, clunky nail, but if you can imagine if it was a piece of steel like this, small, it could be a very working nail. Here are two nails that I actually made. I actually used a different technique than I showed here. So we made this, and again, what we want to try to do is use the tools that we have in order to make the shapes that we want. So let's use a claw hammer that some of you may have, and we're going to take this back to the shape that we had originally. So we've continued to make this. We're just hammering. We're going side to side. We're making it longer and skinnier to at one point get to really skinny down here on one edge. Down here, we're going to make this really tiny, really skinny. And then what you can do is to start to roll it up. And we'll take it over here to the edge and just kind of brush it off. push it over a little bit, brush it off again. Just like this. And then you can start to curl it in like this. And then keep going over the edge. You see how it's breaking? Because it got it too thin. Over the edge. And once you get it there, so we're going to take this, split right down the middle. You're going to take this, go back over the edge of the anvil. You're going to curl these up. Open it up a little. Knock this down some more. Stand it up this way. And what you have there is something approximating a snail. Stay tuned and be safe. Thank you. Bye.